Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Bucci and today I've got another Guild Wars 2 video for you. Today I'm going to be talking about map completion and more specifically world completion and some tips that I have picked up while doing it. I'm at about 99% world completion at the moment. I'm waiting on a few things in World vs World, but I have completed all of the explorable areas, all of the cities and all of that stuff very recently. So I've got all this stuff quite fresh in my mind. I've got some tips that may be useful to you if you want to do this as well. So buckle up and listen in because there's some good stuff here, I think. First things first, you want to set yourself up well. You want to find a build that's got a good balance between survivability and damage and has as much run speed increase as possible. Any good leveling build will probably take these into account, so just loading up any leveling build depending on your profession will probably do the right job. Survivability I put a lot of focus on because if you're running around in full Berserker's gear, you're probably not going to be able to just run through enemies that easily. You're probably going to take quite a bit of damage, so having that high survivability just makes it easier just to run past enemies at certain points, because you will need to do that in order to make this a quicker process. You don't want to have to stop to fight absolutely everything. So a leveling build is usually a safe bet because they do take all these things into account. For food, I'd suggest Magic Find, since there aren't really any other foods that would be of great help when it comes to world completion. If you're using Magic Find food, you're going to get some nice items along the way, which makes map completion just that little bit more rewarding. I personally used Dragonfly cupcakes because they're quite cheap, and sure they only last 20 minutes, but you know, if you buy enough of them, you make up for it anyway. So when it comes to completion, I suggest doing one map at a time and not moving on to another map until the one you're on is finished. You've got to stick to your guns and do one map at a time. This makes it much easier to keep track of what you need to do still. Like if you've got like 70% in one area and like 94% in another, then you've got to dart between maps and there's plenty of loading screens, and it just makes the whole process much more difficult. So I'd say start and finish a zone before you move on to the next one. So I went from left to right in terms of explorable areas. So I moved from the Maguma jungle areas into Kryta, and then I did Ors, I did Cursed Shore, Malcolm's Leap, and straight to Devastation. Then I moved into the Shiver Peaks and then Ascalon. I moved from left to right on the world map and saved the cities and World vs World for last. So the only places you need 100% exploration are in 100% map completion. Sorry, exploration is something completely different. There are 25 explorable areas, which are the ones I've mentioned, 6 cities and all 4 World vs World maps, and the Chantry of Secrets, which you can find plenty of information on if you just type in Chantry of Secrets on Google. Don't worry about dungeons and living wild areas, that stuff doesn't matter at all, it doesn't come into play at all there. So when you start a whole new area, the first thing I suggest is getting a completed map online and working from there. The website I used is Guild Wars 2's version on MMORPG Live. The address is gw2.mmorpg-life.com. As usual, all links and whatever will be in the description, so don't worry about that. It has completed maps with tick boxes, so you can show certain things like points of interest and vistas and all that really beautiful stuff. Once you've started the area, I would suggest to first get all the waypoints. This will make it much easier to move around the map later, and it will also open up areas of the map for you to see. Once you've got all the waypoints, you can just dart between them really easily and get all the renown hearts and other stuff. Along the way, you're probably going to pick up some points of interest as well, so that speeds up the process a little bit. The next thing I then suggest is the completion of renown hearts and skill points. This is the only bit that really requires combat. Renown hearts will take the longest time, as you're required to kill stuff and do stuff and fix stuff and pick up stuff and pretty much everything. Try to do as large a variety of the tasks. 1, keep it fresh and interesting, and 2, to do it really quickly. Using scouts, which are on the map, the little telescope symbols, to highlight renown hearts is also really useful because they don't always appear on your map until you get into a very certain area. Skill points are also pretty easy to do. They're not really much of a test of skill. If you're struggling with them, I would suggest find someone who can help you out, or if your profession permits it, you could summon an ally to help you. So if you're an elementalist, you can summon an elemental. If you're an Asura, you can summon your golem, so that might be quite useful in order to mitigate damage and take down these skill points much more quickly, because they're usually involved just attacking one enemy. Still on the line of skill points, if you're trying to complete them in Ore and the areas are absolutely crawling with bad guys, it might be worth guesting onto servers where these areas are uncontested. You can use guildwars2state.com, this is gw2state.com, see which temples are open on which servers, and so you'll know which areas are uncontested, and you'll be able to go to them without having a champion risen knight absolutely destroying you every time. Save you a lot of time and a lot of money on repairing your armor. You get killed a lot. Once all the renown hearts and skill points are done, you can move on to everything else. You won't have to do any more real combat, unless you have to kill some enemies around you just to get to a point of interest or vista. From here on, just run past enemies to complete them. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do anything for points of interest. For vistas, obviously you can't be in combat, so you might have to kill off some enemies. But for the most part, you shouldn't have to do any more combat. It's just a case of running past enemies. For vista completion, most are incredibly straightforward, and thinking too hard about them will actually be a hindrance to you. When I was doing some, I was sometimes thinking too smart about them and thinking that they were more complicated than they actually were, and I was looking for all these secret areas and stuff like that, which weren't actually there. Sadly, the vistas in Guild Wars 2 are pretty straightforward. They're not much of a challenge. All it requires is a tiny bit of platforming. If you are having trouble with them, however, I didn't understand some of them, and I actually had to look it up online. GuildWars2Vista.com, which is GW2Vista.com, has videos showing you pretty much all the vistas and how to complete them all. The Guild Wars 2 wiki usually has some written explanation as well if you go on the page for a certain area that the vista is in. Point of interest require very little effort on your part. I've already mentioned that. You don't have to do any combat. They don't really require much platforming. For ones you can't find, however, look them up on the internet. Google really is your friend here. There's loads of videos on YouTube explaining how to do some of the points of interest which aren't as obvious, some maybe which are underground but you can't work out where the entrance is, or ones which are a higher platform. It's ones like that that can really throw you off, and you end up spending much more time than you should on them. So if you're stuck for a second on a point of interest, don't be afraid to look it up online, because it's, no one's going to be like, oh, you didn't look it up properly, you cheated. Who cares? You want to do this nice and quickly. I really wanted to speed through this. I wanted to get all these points out there. I'm pretty much done now, I think. Doing this for all of the maps can get you world completion in no time. The world completion, it's less of a test of skill and more of perseverance. Very little of it requires actual skill on your part. Maybe one or two of the skill points are a little bit trickier, and maybe some areas require you to kill quite a few enemies in order to get to a point of interest or a vista or something like that. Some of the renown hearts can sometimes be a little bit annoying as well and require a little bit of thought, but for the most part it's not really a test of skill. You just need to persevere with it and it will be quite easy. Just go at it methodically, do it a bit at a time. I'd say do one map at a time. Think of it like that. Don't think of the bigger picture so much. Don't think of what you haven't done, but think about what you have done and what you're doing at the moment. If you think about all the other zones you've got to do, you'll be like, oh, this is going to take forever. And everyone who's done world completion will have thought that at some point, I'm pretty certain. I try not to think about it, and I know I'm talking too much about it, but just think about the areas that you have done and the area that you're doing at the moment. Don't think about the bigger picture until you're getting close to the end. If you go at it methodically, you'll have your been there, done that title very, very quickly, and if you want, you'll have your gifts of exploration for your legendary if that's what you're going for as well. So that's pretty much it. My tips on getting map completion. I've just done it in the format of one map. You can rinse and repeat these tips in every zone you go to. They're pretty much universal, except for the tips that I've given on ore and things like that. They will have to be done in a certain way. Just a few passing tips for ore. Just try and avoid enemies as much as you can. Be stealthy if possible. Avoid enemies. Try and get help from people if you need it. Some of the skill points are quite hard to get to, and some of them you can't guess for really. And for that, you're probably going to have to call on other people unless you have some great tips or some great trick that you can get past some of those nasty champions with. I can't really see people going out there and just, or the average player just going out and soloing them. I assume some people can, but I don't really see a lot of people being able to do that. So for those, you might have to call in some help, and if you need help and you're on the EU servers, send me a private message on YouTube. I can give you a hand with it if I'm online. I'll add you and we can go to these areas. If you need help with vistas as well, just send me a message. If you want me to make specific videos on vistas or points of interest that you can't find, tell me, I'd be happy to do them as well. It's some extra content for me, and it's something I've been thinking about doing anyway. So if you want that, please let me know. So thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you want to see more videos like this one, tutorials on Guild Wars 2 and other games, hit the subscribe button and you'll see all of that. Expect 1, 2, maybe 3 videos a week. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I'll see you later.